How about we talk a little bit about Irish potato famine? I want to see, and you'll help me figure this out. I'm really curious to see. So I found this channel, and I'm curious to see if this is something on the lines of sort of a little bit like oversimplified, if you will. And the channel is called, I haven't watched any of their videos, by the way, so I haven't got a clue if we're going to like it or not. But the channel is called Extra History. It has 4.5 million subscribers, massive channel, very successful. If you see the art, I'm kind of covering it now, but if you look at this thumbnail, for instance, this one here, I mean, the art looks really nice. And it's very historical, and at least in the topics. For those who kind of use this as a term of complaint or critique when it comes to like oversimplified, and they're like, oh, but they're not perfectly historically correct, or it's too simple. Well, first and foremost, it's in the freaking name, so come on. Oversimplified, I'm not expecting a deep dive, but at the same time, this is entertainment. We're watching it for entertainment, so I'm not expecting I'm not going to be too pedantic about it. I mean, I'll try at least.
The first thing the farmer notices is the smell.
Okay.
An earthy rot in the fields. The Irishman walks into his potato field to find the plants turning brown and wilting. He digs up a tuber and finds it slimy like a bar of soap.
Oh.
When he slices it open, brown mucus oozes out. The whole crop is the same. It'll be a hungry year, but he will survive. Because this isn't Ireland in the famine year of 1845. It's the United States 2 years earlier. And this man has no idea how this blight will devastate the country of his birth. But before we continue...
Pretty good drawings. Let's go. Isle of Blight.
The Irish potato famine ranks as one of Europe's worst agricultural disasters.
Yeah.
An event so momentous that it not only defined a generation, it scattered a people to the winds. When the blight arrived in 1845, Ireland had a population of 8.2 million. Within a decade, though, a third of it was gone. Around 1.1 million died from starvation and disease, while 2 million emigrated abroad. The height of the famine years, when children's mouths were stained green from eating grass and dogs scavenged graveyards, people brawled on the docks for space aboard the overcrowded vessels. Most didn't even care where the ship was headed, as long as it wasn't Ireland. Yet Ireland was not the only country, or even the first, to experience the blight. The fungus responsible emerged in the United States in 1843. Hitching a ride to Europe...
Oh, I'm going to read that. 1 second. I'm going to read that.
The fungus responsible...
Okay, so P. infestans is actually a fungus-like microorganism called an oomycete. I don't know. Or water mold, I'll go with that one. Victorians thought it was a fungus. Oh, I see. So when they were reading yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Victorians always get everything wrong anyways. All right, we all love history, which is why one of my favorite genres of video games are strategic games, whether it be real-time strategy or 4X. I just love the idea of playing with stuff that I'm passionate about, whether it be history itself or historical heroes, which is why I would like to take a moment to tell you about the kind sponsor that made this video possible, Heroes of History. Heroes of History is a strategic city building and hero collection game featuring famous historical and mythological characters. Of course, the main mechanics of this game is going to be the heroes, whether it be Hercules, Cleopatra, Leonidas, or the Great Caesar. The story is about time travel, defending timelines. It's actually quite cool, but what's really interesting is how you can grow your cities. You can power up the heroes, battle in real time, both in solo and multiplayer modes, and it really is a combination of these three systems, which makes the game rather unique. Now, of course, the hero collection components is a lot of fun, but so is growing your own civilization, which you can do through research and combat. And you can play competitively if that's what you want, or you can just enjoy some casual play. See here, I'm managing my village and I'm making sure that I collect my resources. Lovely graphics. Tasty fruits with might need a little pasta as well, but hey, I'll go with fruit for now. Luxurious home, Stone Age, small home, Stone Age. Alright Metatron, but what do I do if I don't have enough space left in my device? Well, worry not, because you can literally play this game anytime on mobile or browser, no download needed. Now let's talk about one of the most fun mechanics of this game, the antimatter. Let's see what random champion we get. Alright, so I've been playing quite a bit and I collected a lot of gems, and I'm going to spend the gems, specifically 1600 as you can see on screen now, to see what kind of heroes we get with the antimatter. So, come on, give me someone good. Come on, give me someone good. Come on. What have we got? Alright, so Mansa Musa, we appreciate that. Miyamoto Musashi, oh that's awesome. Super Samurai, wow, I got some really good ones. But you know what else I have? Legendary. So, come on, show me the fiber of your fabric, who you gonna get? I'm gonna get someone Roman, am I? Because I'm in my descendants and whatnot. Give me someone Roman. Give me someone Roman. Don't give up. Come on. What do we get? Boudica! Unexpected, but I actually love it. That is the power of ancient Rome. Turn your former enemies into allies. From March 11 to April 28th, there will be a huge in-game event, the Ancient Egypt. Players will step with Cleopatra into the Valley of Kings to defend the Egyptian timeline. Meet the new event limited heroes Tutankhamun and Nefertiti. Join the Ancient Egypt event to face Anubis. So what are you waiting for? Join the fun. Download the game through my personal link in the description box to face the Egyptian god Anubis. Now, of course, in order to face the god, you'll need a lot of resources, so if you use my personal link in the description, you will get 10 antimatters, 2000 XP, 20,000 food, and 5 Duat keys. A massive thanks to Heroes of History for sponsoring my channel.
Emerged in the United States in 1843, hitching a ride to Europe in cargo holds. Farmers attempting to strengthen European potato strains may have even accidentally imported it when they crossbred their potatoes with American stock. And strengthened by a rainy summer and carried by the wind, the fungus stormed the continent. During the summer of 1845, news of the blight filled European newspapers. Belgium had lost 87% of its potato crop, Flanders 92%. Holland lost 70%.
What a
Germany and
disaster.
France got off relatively light, only losing a fifth of their harvest.
So they still have the, what is it, Kartoffeln? Kartoffeln, I think is the only word I know in German. Kartoffeln. Warum? I know too.
Rumors of starvation leaked out of Russia and Poland, while English farmers saw similar devastation. Governments prepared for a season of hunger and instability. The potato, after all, was the staple diet of Europe's emerging industrial working class. This miracle plant,
Not in the south, but yeah.
imported from Peru, could produce 2 to 4 times more calories per acre than grain.
Yeah.
Cheap and easy to prepare.
I love potatoes. What about you? What's your favorite way of eating potatoes? For me, but really there isn't a way they don't taste good. Literally, you could boil them in water and put a little onion. Great. For me, fried. You gotta fry them. Baked potatoes though, yeah, with a little rosemary, and it smells the entire kitchen, the entire house. Holy moly.
It allowed Europe's shrinking agricultural sector to feed its booming manufacturing workforce. And between 1750 and 1850, the European population nearly doubled, partially due to the potato. Any threat to the potato crop was a serious problem. In fact, these crop failures would help spur the wave of revolutions that racked Europe in 1848. But here the story of Ireland diverges, because while all these countries experienced economic hardship and social change, Ireland alone starved. The reasons for that are complicated, but they boil down to 2 factors. The first was a land system that made Ireland uniquely vulnerable to a crop failure. And the second factor was human. A group of British leaders governing from London who saw the famine relief as a vehicle for reforming the Irish economy and instructing the people's moral character. Throughout the crisis, British policymakers would make economic reform their primary objective.
Yeah, no wonder the Irish are not very fond of it. I can see that. I can totally see that.
With saving lives as a distant secondary goal. The blight indeed was, as British politicians argued, an act of God, unstoppable and inevitable. The famine, by contrast, was the work of men. But that was still to come. In the summer of 1845...
Yeah, also because in this period, the industrialization really overpopulated cities. And even though oftentimes when we look at movies that are set in the Middle Ages, for instance, everything looks dirty and everyone is sick and everything is gloomy and dark, That's actually a better representation on the first mass industrial cities of the 18th century and the early 19th century. Not all, but I'm saying if you really wanted to convey that and exaggerate it a bit, that would be a better representation rather than the Middle Ages. Because in the Middle Ages, I mean, of course, if we are looking at the plague, that's a different situation. If that's where you want to set your, whatever the heck it is you're doing, movie, video game. But even after that, there would be, in fact, less people. And so the overall economic condition and salary will go up, believe it or not. It's an awful thing to say, but it's true. There was an economic advantage to a lot of people dying, which is terrible. But that's the reality of it. But overpopulation in cities and decreasing hygienic conditions actually brought in a lot of problems when it comes to the industrial age, 100%. And it is possible, and this might sound really strange, but it's not confirmed, but it is possible that even the average height of city dwellers started to go to lower, because average height of individuals has to do with nutrition. And when nutrition is bad, people are poor, people are sick, things are dirty. You can see that. So, in fact, the average height in the Middle Ages will be higher. Not compared to today, we are taller, but compared to some of these situations in early industrial societies. Isn't that weird?
Peel was tracking reports of blight. He worried about it striking England, of course, but he knew that if it took hold in Ireland, the result would be catastrophic. Technically, Ireland had been a part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland since 1801. But in a practical sense, it had been the very first step in the British colonial empire. The English had ruled it directly or indirectly for centuries. In that time, the British Crown had gradually dispossessed native Irish Catholic families, confiscating their land and gifting it to English and Scots Protestants who were considered more reliably loyal, while Catholic countries sponsored a series of Irish revolts against the Protestant English, and tensions grew. The climax came when Oliver Cromwell reconquered Ireland after a rebellion, completing the process of land
Nice armor, though.
confiscation and totally replacing Irish landowners with English and Scots, the so-called Anglo-Irish. And it was bloody. Conservative estimates suggest that Cromwell's invasion, along with the famine it caused, may have killed 10% of the Irish population.
Holy moly.
To prevent another uprising, Cromwell and later British governments passed a series of penal laws restricting Catholic rights. Catholics could not hold public office, own firearms, or be admitted to the bar as lawyers. They couldn't own a horse worth over £5, vote, teach school, or marry a Protestant.
You might think it's crazy that you would have laws and, in fact, a sort of inward-outward distinction between true religion and not even a different religion per se. They're both Christians, but between like the Protestants and the Catholics, be like, man, that's crazy that they consider they're treating them as externals. That system happened in the Middle Ages. It's just that in the medieval period, you were either a Christian or you were a heathen, if you will. Pagan. Oh, goodness gracious, man, today my English is just cooked. That's how they distinguish. It's kind of like the same thing that the Romans were doing. It's just that the Romans did it between citizenship, you're a Roman, and lack thereof, so you're a barbarian. That's the inward-outward. And it did have real societal repercussions to whether or not what you could do, the kind of job opportunities, career, stepping up in the social ladder, and all that kind of rich you can get. There was a lot. Whether you're one of us, Roman, or you're not, barbarian. But in the Middle Ages, that was through Christianity. You're a Christian or you're a heathen. If you're a heathen, bye. We don't have anything to do with it. Well, we'll tax you, but that's pretty much it. And so this doesn't surprise me so much because of what was already done centuries before.
There were restrictions on how they could own land, and when willing land to children, they couldn't give it intact to the eldest, and had to break it up equally among all their children. Churches couldn't be built of stone and had to sit far from roads, and they couldn't attend universities at home or abroad.
Wow.
And 80% of the Irish population was Catholic. These laws were designed to bar Irish Catholics from all forms of political and economic advancement. And while they were gradually repealed, the last vanishing in 1829, it would take generations for the Irish to recover economically.
Yeah.
And on top of that, these landlords charged astronomical rent on the land, barely allowing the native Irish farmers to survive. And the whole thing took place in a system of middlemen so convoluted that, okay, Here's an analogy. Imagine someone owns an apartment building today. That's the landowner.
I always found curious this pronunciation characteristic of American English that some American speakers have when you say imagine. Imagine. It sounds almost like a ah instead of imagine. Let me hear it again.
Analogy. Imagine someone.
Imagine. It sounds like an ah to me. Is that just me because I'm not a native speaker, or am I onto something? Let me hear it again.
So convoluted that. Okay. Here's an analogy. Imagine
100% he says imagine. Imagine. I'm not making fun of it. I find it curious. What do I know to tell you? I'm a linguist. Yeah.
Someone owns an apartment building today. That's the landowner. They don't want to manage it, so they pass it off to a middle person to manage. Now the middle person wants to make a profit and knows there's a lot of demand. So they jack up the rent.
Yeah.
And to make more profits, they subdivide some of the larger apartments into smaller ones. Now, under the pressure of making this exorbitant rent, some of the building's tenants start to get roommates or rent some of their bedrooms on Airbnb.
There you go.
Further subdividing their own apartment. Wow, this sounds really familiar. Oh, hi, NYC. I didn't see you in this analogy.
See?
Anyway, that's basically
Okay, so it's not just Italy then.
what happened to Irish farmers. In fact, some of the landowners, known as absentee landlords, hadn't even lived in Ireland for generations. The trend was bad. Then events made it worse. During the Napoleonic Wars, Irish goods suddenly became a major part of British imports, as the war cut off suppliers in France. Things improved for the Irish, with many turning to new manufacturing jobs. But then, Napoleon was defeated. French goods returned, and the burgeoning industrial sector collapsed. Out-of-work weavers and tradesmen flooded the countryside, engaging in ludicrous bidding wars for small plots of farmland, promising to pay rents the land could never sustain. Irish farmers began cultivating land that had never been farmed before. Rocky hillsides, beaches, and bogs.
Well, I wonder let me double check that. I want to know what the percentage of arable land in Ireland is. I know I looked it up the other day, but I forgot because there was a list of everything. The only one that's stuck in my head is 1.1% when it comes to Iceland. Insane. So latest value 6.4. So not as bad as not as bad as like Iceland and whatnot, but still not fantastic. So I can see why they would do that. Average is 7.
Ready through the inheritance laws and the greed of landowners got subdivided further. And middlemen for those landlords, increasingly disappointed with returns from potato farmers, evicted whole villages to use the land for cattle raising, which squeezed the farmers even further. By 1841, 45% of all agricultural holdings were under 5 acres, a consequence of population explosion paired with a land system that depended on chains of landlords, often 3 or 4 deep, leading back to England.
Yeah.
Only one thing allowed people to survive. You guessed it, the potato. A single acre of
Very nice build-up, by the way, to give us the idea of how... Because imagine, he could have just started by telling us the story of how the potatoes got bad, which kind of hinted at the beginning for a hook. But then instead of just jumping onto it and telling you in this date, this happened, everybody died, instead is kind of building up to show you why these potatoes were so important. I think it's pretty well-made video.
Potato plants could produce 6 tons of crop per year, enough to feed a family of 6. No other crop provided such a yield, but many Irish families were larger than that, and the rent still had to be paid. In the decades leading up to the famine, the shrinking plots of land gave most no more than a subsistence living. Ireland was already the poorest country in Europe. Before the subdivision, most families at least had a cow, but in the decades before the famine, the more expensive cow disappeared.
Moof.
Replaced by a pig. Milk, butter, eggs, and herring disappeared from the peasants' diets. Cash crops like barley and...
I'm surprised that even the fish, because at the end of the day, even though fish is something, it's precious, expensive, sort of, depending on the fish. But then, like in the Middle Ages, I mean, you have to pay taxes over it because it's not like, even if you're a medieval serf, the lake, the rivers, the streams, they all belong to your local lord and everything gets taxed.
And oats vanished, replaced by more potatoes. Visitors were shocked at the depth of Irish poverty. The majority of the country went shoeless, and many in the countryside wore literal rags. In towns, landless workers lived by the pawn shop, pawning their Sunday clothes after attending church, buying them back on Friday payday, wearing them to church again, and then repeating the cycle.
Man.
But those same visitors were often astounded by the peasants' hardiness. Irish peasants were strong and often good-looking. Scientific testing, so popular in the Victorian age, found that the average Irish peasant was both taller and stronger than both English and Belgian ones. And it was...
Really? Interesting, because that is, of course, the strength, I can see it. Because, I mean, if you work the land, you're going to be tough, 100%. I can see that. But nutrition is an important component of that. And, I mean, potatoes have carbs, so you need that protein. Well, the eggs, I guess.
Due to their diet. Eating nutritious, vitamin-filled potatoes 3 meals a day.
I don't see how that can build muscles, though, and height without protein. What do you guys think?
But in August of 1845, Irish farmers walked into their fields and smelled rot. The blight was in Ireland. But London had a plan to use this crisis to remake Ireland. A plan that would bring down Prime Minister Peel.
The Corn Laws.
London, September 12th, 1845. The press operator runs off issues of the Gardener's Chronicle. Over 6,000 copies, fresh and ready for tomorrow. The editor bursts in, waving a piece of paper. They must stop the presses and insert a front page notice. No, it can't wait until next week. The potato blight has reached Ireland, the notice reads. Crops around Dublin are perishing. It ends with a question. Where will Ireland be in the event of a universal potato rot? But everyone knows where it will be. In the embrace of hunger. 2 months later, the Gardener's Chronicle was in the minority when it predicted agricultural disaster. Over the past 2 months, the press sent mixed signals. Some said the potato crop was fine. Others that the blight only affected a few counties. So to get a sense of the problem, Prime Minister Robert Peel sent a scientific commission to get solid numbers. Wait, pause the history for just a second.
Okay.
The Prime Minister's name during the potato famine was Peel. No one else thinks that's a little funny?
Oh, no. I didn't even notice that. I don't know why it didn't click, but it did not click. I love he's got a little RP, I guess, so we can imagine how he sounds.
No, I know it's a serious story. Come on, stop looking at me like, fine, you know what, it's fine. I'm sorry.
Potato Peel.
His name's Peel, though. Now, that commission was in the House of Commons, telling Parliament to expect 80% mortality in the potato crop.
Why is the entirety of the Parliament mad? It's kind of funny. Every single one of them is mad.
They devised methods for keeping the blight away from harvested potatoes, but these proved ineffective. The news troubled Peel. In the summer, there had been hints of crop loss, but that was nothing new. Irish potatoes were unreliable. There'd been 16 potato failures since 1800. And when crops failed, tenants couldn't pay their rent.
Of course.
When tenants didn't pay, landlords brought police and troops to throw them off their land.
Really?
That meant riots and retaliatory livestock killings. It would also mean secret societies like the Molly Maguires and White Boys ambushing landlords and middlemen in their carriages.
I can see that,
And those previous potato losses were only regional. This was the whole island. Instability worried.
Sounds a bit like today, you say? A constant repeat of cycles, isn't it? History.
A few years before, the Irish Member of Parliament, Daniel O'Connell, who had campaigned successfully against anti-Catholic laws, had set his sights on repealing the Act of Union. O'Connell's outdoor meetings had attracted 500,000 people, and the government had to threaten force to disperse them. Since then, Peel had taken a more conciliatory approach, but famine could upend everything.
Of course.
And the reports were bad. Now that it was November and the full harvests were coming in, the scope of the problem was becoming clear. Not even harvested potatoes were safe. In Western Ireland, a poor farmer had buried his harvested potatoes in a pit, muttering a prayer at how lucky he'd been. No blight. But a few days later, he opened the pit to check them. Half were totally rotten. Panic struck the whole west of Ireland, where the climate was too wet for grain or oats. I cannot describe in language strong enough.
Yeah, you say, why didn't they plant other stuff? Sounds like they were, I don't know, he said it wasn't an available choice. I wonder why.
Read one account. The frightful and awful alarm of the poor people. May God, in his bountiful mercy, avert such a disastrous calamity. Peel had his faults, but inaction was not one of them. The son of a textile industrialist, He was the first prime minister to come from business rather than the aristocracy. He'd risen through the civil service with sheer hard work and a few big gambles.
Cool.
And he was about to gamble again. Ireland would need food, but Peel would have to walk a fine line. He was a Tory, and his Conservative Party were hardcore trade protectionists, particularly due to support from grain merchants. Whatever he did, it couldn't undercut or upset the grain market. And then there was the opposition, the liberal Whigs. They were similarly hardcore when it came to free trade economics. They hated any government intervention in the market. So in other words, the Tories wouldn't support bringing in foreign grain because it would cut local merchants' profits, and the Whigs would shoot down any intervention on price. Meanwhile, Daniel O'Connell and a Dublin group proposed their own measures. Forbid turning grain into whiskey, bring in foreign grains, institute public works, and stop exporting Irish grain, beef, and oats to England.
Yeah, good luck with that when it comes to the whiskey and the Irish.
Neither party, Peel knew, would stand for that.
That's what I would think. Yeah, it ends neatly, actually, at 15 minutes in this. It's a good channel. Now, of course, this is a topic that I haven't studied, so I haven't got a clue if what they said is correct, but it was interesting. And I think it does appear like they're a channel that puts time into production, because making a 53 minutes video, animation only, in drawings, it's a massive allocation of resources, which I do appreciate. I'm going to have a look at their Patreon very quickly. Extra history, the extra credits channel. There you go. Very cool. Very cool. How many? 8,000 members. Yeah, they definitely have the resources. That's good for them. We'll have to see if they have something medieval or ancient Roman. And I think we could have a look at that, because then I can interject more on when it comes to the validity of the research. I noticed that with Oversimplified, that occasionally I had to say a thing or two, but nothing major. I really think Oversimplified is actually quite nice as a form of infotainment. I really like their drawing style. Like, look at this medieval guy with the helmet.